Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of the I've Created a Monster podcast. I am your host, Rushni Cope, aka Glamazzini Online, and this podcast is a place for me to share my unfiltered thoughts and personal musings and observations about whatever I feel like. Today, I am live with my patrons on YouTube. To be live in the chat while I record, become a patron at patreon.com/Glamazzini. So I'm going to cover a lot of topics today, so it's going to be kind of rapid fire. Also, I just told my patrons that at the last minute, I decided to go black and white, which I think is zebra, right? As opposed to all black, okay? So be amazed. First, I'm going to start today's podcast with a couple personal updates. I have began retroactively, I've actually finished uploading the finished edited podcast to my Facebook page. So if you are watching this on Facebook, drop a dragon emoji in the comment section and let me know. Why? Because I realized that the people on Facebook who followed me mostly for the funny videos. And this podcast is most akin or most like my weekly updates used to be on YouTube, as well as the funny videos. So even though I had not been putting the finished edited podcast on the Facebook page, the Glamazzini Facebook page, I went back and decided to do it. Also, that page is monetized and Zuck better have my money, okay? I have no problem with switching up my strategy to maximize or optimize financial gain at the expense of Zuckerberg. The second thing that I wanted to share with you is I am back in the job market. What does that mean? So last May, I was laid off from my part-time job of 4.5 years right before my son's surgery. I literally put in for family medical leave on, I think, Friday, and I was laid off on Tuesday. Was that suspicious? Yes. However, ultimately, I learned that it was a group layoff. So who knows? Who knows? You know, you don't want that to be the case, but it's what happened. So I'm just stating the facts. And because my son's surgery was coming up at the end of the month, I decided not to go back to work, which wildly, I just realized earlier this week that was the same thing that happened to me 12 years ago when I was out of the job market in corporate America. It had to do with my son's medical stuff. My contract ended and I decided not to go back to work so I could take care of my son. Well, the same thing happened to me last year. So this seems to be the story that I'm living, one where I get bumped out of the job market and, like many women, have to decide to be a caretaker. So my son's surgery then began to move all over the calendar. It was scheduled for the end of May, then it was scheduled for August, then it happened in September, but then it had to be emergency stopped. And then we were in the hospital for a week with him with his back temporarily closed. And then it finished in October and it was a whole thing. And so obviously in that time frame, I was unable to go back to work. Well, all of that has subsided. My son is doing incredibly well. If you want updates on how he is, you'll have to go back to episode 1 to see like the whole download of what happened to him. And I'm back in the job market. So today's personal update is I am being bold. I am being audacious. My word for 2025 is audacity. And so I am doing some things outside of my comfort zone, outside of the box, in trying to find employment. If you are watching this, and I am not even joking, and you see a opportunity or position that you think I would be a great fit for, please inbox me. Instagram is probably the easiest place to find me. My Facebook inbox is a little wild west, but I will hopefully eventually see it. Or you can email me, ini@glamazzini.com. I am not joking. Okay, let's do it. First, let's talk about people who have passed. Songstress, Grammy winner, and muse Roberta Flack has passed away a couple days ago. She lived a long and beautiful life. I think she was 88. And I am just grateful to have lived at a time when she was alive to sing to us. My first memory of Roberta Flack is actually because of the Fugees. Okay, I'm Gen X. And of course, they used her song, Killing Me Softly, as their song, like the chorus of their song. And I remember I was walking around my house singing it and singing the lyrics incorrectly. And my mother corrected me. and told me that it was killing me softly with his song. I don't remember what I was saying. And so I ended up looking up the original song, and that's how I found out about the beautiful song stylings of Roberta Flack. So I hope that she rests in peace, and I'm grateful and thankful for her art. Yes. All right. Moving to somebody entirely different that most of us probably will never remember. Cussing pastor Thaddeus Matthews passed away, I think yesterday or the day before, at 67 years old. Who is the cussing pastor? Just a few years ago, when I was making all the funny videos on Facebook, I found out about a guy who had deemed himself the cussing pastor. And he was the pastor of a church in Tennessee. And this man used to be up there cussing big bad word from the pulpit. He went live online, and that's how all of us found out about his potty mouth. He'd be cussing in his sermons. He'd be cussing people out in the comments. I don't know what exactly made him deem himself the cussing pastor and made that part of his like pastoral identity. But when I was making funny videos, I made a video basically being like, what part of the Bible is this in? Well, unfortunately, he has passed away. And I think we found out about it from his wife. Not sure if they're still married or not, because some articles say estranged. So I'm assuming they're still married. She said that he made amends and he had repented. I don't know what that means, because I think up until the very end, he was still very proud of the fact that he was a potty mouth pastor, and he has now left us. Next, let's talk about all these planes that continue to crash and have accidents. I think in the last podcast episode, I was talking about all the plane crashes and all the accidents, and it is still happening. Practically every other day, we hear about a plane crash or an incident. Just yesterday, I saw a video of a commercial flight landing and then touching the runway and then taking off again because a private plane was crossing the runway right in front of them. I am not sure what's happening. But I am just always in prayer for our safety. And I am nervous, clearly, as a person who has to travel by plane to get to the Virgin Islands and places that I love. And I know a lot of people who are international and national travelers. And so I am in consistent prayer. Delta had a flight recently that skidded and ended up upside down, and everyone survived that crash. And word on the street is Delta is offering everyone on that plane $30,000 now. I don't know what the strings attached are, but you would think the strings attached are they don't sue Delta, right? That's what you would think, which brings a story to mind that I wasn't going to tell, but I'm going to tell it now as best as I can. So several years ago, I was eating ice cream, and I found something foreign in my ice cream. Not something foreign like gross. It was another article of food that could be in ice cream. It just wasn't supposed to be in that ice cream. So I contacted the company, and the company was like, oops, please send back to us what was in your ice cream. That's what it was. Send me the thing that was in the ice cream. So I sent it to them. Their representative got back to me, and they were like, OMG, what had happened was we run batches of ice cream on the same line, so like one big batch of chocolate for however long, and then they clean the lines, and then they come through with another batch of, I don't know, cookies and cream, and then they clean the line and they come through with pistachio. Well, whatever ice cream was before mine was the ice cream that had that in it. Now, once again, it was a food item, so I wasn't like totally freaked out. However, they offered me exactly kind of like what Delta offered me, except in coupons for ice cream. So Delta offered them $30,000 to keep their mouth shut and not sue. This company offered me a year's worth of ice cream coupons. And I had to sign paperwork that said, and that's basically it. Like, I'm not going to do anything beyond that. Now, if it had been something disgusting, a rock, a part of an animal, I don't know, a gear from a machine, I probably would not have taken the coupons. But back then, knowing that it was just a edible thing that does exist in ice cream, and it just wasn't supposed to be in my ice cream, and them explaining to me that it was something that had gotten jammed in a line, I did take the coupons. And I kid you not, for almost 2 years, because I didn't eat ice cream that often, I would go to the grocery store and the people would be like, where did you get these 100% off coupons? And I'd be like, murr, murr, murr. And then I would just go about my business. And that was the end of that. So all of that to say, in my case, I took the bribe coupons to keep my mouth shut, although my mouth isn't shut right now, but nobody's being incriminated because y'all don't know who I'm talking about. And in the Delta case, I would not. Okay. You are not going to give me $30,000 when I could run you up for much more money than that. And so that's what's happening in the land of airlines. And if you are traveling anytime soon, please stay safe out there. Next, Anthony Rico is Diddy's defense attorney, and he requested to withdraw from Puffy's case. And I quote, "Under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Sean Combs." Now, what makes it even more wild work is Anthony Rico has been a very high profile defense attorney for 45 federal death penalty cases across the country, including Osama bin Laden, terrorists, organized criminals, capital offenses. It really makes you wonder, what in the world did this attorney see in Puffy's documents that he was like, sorry to this man, I can't do it. Now, TikTok has rumors going around, but I have not verified this, that it has something to potentially do with necrophilia. That's horrific. And if that's the case, I could see how Rico is like, ain't nobody got time for that. You on your own, sir. Okay. Bin Laden, I know. You, I do not know. The other thing is the difference between necromancy and necrophilia is whooping TikTok's tail. Okay. Because people are saying that there's a rumor that Puffy was involved with necromancy, which is like witchcraft that has to do with dead people. But no, I think that they mean necrophilia. All of this is alleged, by the way, which is sexual relations that has to do with a dead body, which is anyway, all of this we will see come out when it comes out. Fun fact, Puffy's trial is scheduled for my birthday, which is May 5th. So I guess I will not forget that that is happening. Next, speaking of TikTok, let's talk about throat spray girl. So last week I'm sitting on TikTok and I see this beautiful dark-skinned lady talking about story time. And I'm always good for a little story time. So I settle in, okay, on the Tickety Talks to hear what she's talking about. Turns out her story time was about her dropping off her kid and dropping everything to fly herself out to, I think, Atlanta, so she could have sexual relations with a stranger she had met in the social media DMs, I think Instagram, and specifically that she had done things like, 1, paid for her own flight, 2, sent this man pictures of throat spray, like the numbing spray, you know, as like a sexual thing of what she was going to, things I want to do to you, to the point that that man didn't even know what the throat spray was for. Okay. And she was going to toss his salad. Okay. Which is like lick booty, if y'all don't know that. Okay. And she had just met this man on the internet, not in real life. This man was, what is going on? So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to her story time. And I was just like, girl, there were so many points where you should have stopped this. And I wanted to be on your side, okay? Because love a Black woman from infinity to infinity. But when you are saying a story and I'm just like, uh-oh, that don't sound right, I just abandon, I abort, okay? So I put in the comments, girl, there were so many no's in this story, I'm just gonna have to let you be. Come to find out, the dude comes to TikTok that she was talking about to defend himself, and he got all kind of screenshots and receipts and messages, and we were just, and the lesson that I learned from Throat Spray Girl, okay, because then she was fighting for her life trying to tell us that she was in the right, when I had already decided she was errant from her own video. Forget what he was saying. I didn't even need him in the mix. He could have stayed out of it. His baby mama showed up. It was a lot going. People got tattoos of people's names on their bodies. It's a lot of like young people behavior. We all were young. We all did stuff. We just didn't have it play out on social media in real time. Thank you, Jesus. I just had a praise on the A because I remembered some of my foolishness. Anyway, however, she had incriminated herself just from her original video. And so by the time he showed up and the baby mama showed up and we started finding out that she was trying to lick his booty, it was a lot. And what I want to say from my vantage point, breathing on 50's neck, is what I just alluded to, which is thank God for not having the folly of youth, although she was 31. But to me, 31 is still young. Okay. The folly of youth play out in real time on social media and many things like this thing. They don't have to be out here on social media. When my son was ill, people found out when I told them. Okay. I could be doing anything back here. I am team tell some, keep some. Everything does not have to be on social media. I am all for being authentic and transparent out here so that you can draw to yourself authenticity and transparency and vulnerability, but everything doesn't have to be on social media. Okay. They may still be playing that out on TikTok. I have left the chat. Okay. Let's talk about HillmanTok drama. I said in several episodes back that an entire fake pretend university had popped up on TikTok when Dr. Barlow put up a video for her 30 African American studies students. And we on TikTok thought it was for us. And we thought we had been enrolled into African American studies. A lot of other people with skills, education, etc., started jumping on, and TikTok University was born. Soon thereafter, TikTok University became HillmanTok. I even remember I was calling it TikTok University, and people came in my comments and were like, hey, we're calling it HillmanTok now. And I was like, okay, I got it, whatever. It's all pretend anyway. We're making this up, so let's go. Fast forward to recently. Jasmine, who is a very large creator on TikTok, I believe she has millions of followers. I don't know, but I think she does. Okay. And I've been following her for a while. She decided to deem herself the imaginary coordinator of social things, because all of us were deeming ourselves imaginary things on TikTok, HillmanTok. And she decided to take the HillmanTok momentum and bring it into real life by actually organizing a real mixer, which it's February 26th when I am filming this. I believe it's actually happening 2 days from today. So it actually hasn't happened yet. And so she put up a video clearly talking about this, and she got a lot of interest in it. And she had to move the venue because she thought only 100 and something people were going to come. And it turned out that it's like way more than that. And it was a whole thing. And the great part about it is the entrance fee was donation only. I think it was like $20. And all the money collected was going to take this imaginary movement and momentum and translate it into real life mutual aid and community care for students, like scholarships and grants for real life students to pay things so that we could take this momentum of this imaginary thing that happened online and actually put boots to the ground, and take the donations. All of that seems positive, right? Right? Yes. I saw it all play out in real time. Then all of a sudden we see this guy pop up on TikTok, and he's basically throwing shade at Jasmine saying, I'm sorry, who are you? And why didn't you invite us? Because we are the administration of HillmanTok. And I was like, sir, who are you? Who are you? And also, why are you throwing your nuts around at Jasmine like that? This is all made up. Then I see another lady who I did recognize, who said she was the founder of HillmanTok, piggyback on that gentleman's commentary and video and make a video toward Jasmine that felt a little grimy, a little nice, nasty, basically alluding to the fact that Jasmine did not have the right to use the HillmanTok name. Now, why do I recognize this lady? Because remember when I said I was calling it TikTok University, people directed me to her page and said, we are now calling it HillmanTok. And I was like, why? And they were like, because this lady decided that this was a good idea. I never actually saw that happen with my eyeballs, but to my understanding, she's the woman that suggested that it should be like Hillman University from, I think, a different world, and it became HillmanTok and yada, yada, yada. So she decided that she was the founder. She changed her TikTok name in the thing to say that she was a HillmanTok founder. I think, not sure, that she was actually applying for a trademark for the wording for HillmanTok, and she was a teacher by trade, which is the last time I saw her. She was still a teacher. I found out when all this drama popped off with Jasmine that this woman had quit her job as a teacher, I think to do stuff that had to do with HillmanTok, which is an imaginary university on the internet. Anyway, she and this guy are now sideways passively threatening Jasmine for using the HillmanTok name. And basically TikTok handed her you know what. I didn't understand what all of that ovary and nut swinging had to do with real life students, people having real life donation, a real life event for an imaginary university that was not a real thing. But apparently that was how they rolled, and it did not turn out very well. And then I saw like professors pulling out and didn't want to use the name. Clearly, Jasmine has backed away and she's still having the event. She's still taking donations. She's still giving the scholarships and doing mutual aid and community care, which I love because I have a Black Women Healing Fund. So community care is right up my alley, and it aligns with my heart toward us coming together to care for each other in big or small ways. Okay, Jasmine has a big platform. And I don't know what happened with the administration, quote unquote, who of the imaginary university, and who deemed them the governor of all things, and why they're threatening her for using the name that all of us are using for a real life thing that can help real life people for an imaginary university. And all I have to say is many lessons were learned. One, don't quit your job for an imaginary university that hasn't taken upstream. Two, when you have somebody who has shown that they do something better than you, I suggest sitting at their feet and learning from them. Jasmine is a leader. She has a leader's energy, and she has created an event with momentum and impact that you as an admin, quote unquote, and all that have not done. Sit with her, partner with her, learn from her. Don't passively threaten her. Anyway, Jasmine's event is still happening. I don't know if it's sold out or not, but good for her. I am proud of her. She has detached herself from the HillmanTok name, and I guess we will see what's happening with quote unquote HillmanTok University and their quote unquote admin and people quitting their jobs. Next up, a few weeks ago, when TikTok had shut down, everyone was suggesting different applications and apps you could go to. People were thinking about going to Lemonade. People were thinking about going to Red Note. And people were also suggesting that you go to Fanbase. Now, I, being a Black content creator, have had several people bring up Fanbase to me recently with the TikTok shutdown, as well as in the past. So much so that when Fanbase first started, I don't know if it first started, but a while ago, I went out and I grabbed my Glamazini name on Fanbase, which is a social media app created by Isaac Hayes III. Yes. I perused like I always do when I join a new application. It wasn't really my cup of tea. It was also glitchy, didn't work that well. I didn't really see a lot of action happening out there. And so I deemed it like I would just have my name, which I do on other platforms all the time. And I never went back. Fast forward to when TikTok shut down, everybody was suggesting, hey, let's go to Red Note. Hey, let's go to Lemonade. And of course, Black people are like, hey, Fanbase exists. It's a Black owned app. Let's go over there. So I decided, since I had been out there a while ago, that it might have been better at this point. Went back in, looked around, didn't like it. It was also still glitchy, right? And I was like, life is hard enough. Y'all hear me say I have a kid with a wheelchair, healing from back surgery still. He has an open pressure sore that I'm working on his hip. We caught the cooties on Monday. We had like 6 doctor's appointments on Monday back to back. It's too much. Okay, if your app is broken and it makes my life harder, I am not looking for harder. I am looking for ease. Okay, so when I went a few years ago, it wasn't working well. When I came back earlier this year, it wasn't working well. I just left that alone. Well, apparently, Franchesca Ramsey, who is a larger social media creator that I have followed for years. I've been following Franchesca since she was on YouTube doing lock videos. Okay, and then she spun off to all sorts of other wonderfulness. She was also getting the same pings from people like, hey, why don't you go to Fanbase? And she made a video. I remember watching that video where she was like getting ready. And she said, hey, being Black owned is not the only reason that I'm going to go to an app. Also, Fanbase specifically doesn't work well. And the owner of the app has been promoting horrible human beings while dragging Black women. Of course, people didn't love that. And of course, the owner of the app, Isaac Hayes III, caught wind of her saying this and did what she said he did, which is drag Black women. Okay. So she suggested that this man was misogynist and all these horrible things. And he basically came back with misogynistic replies to her and to other Black women. So more recently, like in the past week or so, they have really been going back and forth. I don't know what exactly incited it, but one of the things that I enjoy about Francesca, I call her Francesca Receipts Ramsey, okay? She comes back with receipts and screenshots. I don't know if she has a filing system. I don't know how she has the time. I don't know if she has the memory of an elephant because she's like, oh yeah, you wrote me back in 2018. Let me scroll back in my DMs. But she will come with receipts. And when she get on that green screen, she will show you how 3 years ago you was begging in her inbox, but now you want to talk bad about women. And she has a point, because every time I see Isaac Hayes III respond, it is not in an emotionally mature way. It is in a way of like, somebody will have a critique of the functionality of his app, which I also have. I'm not putting it on the internet because who cares, right? I try it. It's glitchy and doesn't work well. I leave. I come back. I try again a year or two. Same thing. I leave, right? When people say the technology isn't technologying, his response is like a middle school boy, and he'll be like, "You're ugly and your makeup is heavy." It's like he can't have a conversation about technology on the technology level. He just has to always go and do something misogynistic. And I also realize that in his responses, he doesn't seem to understand what people are saying when they say it to him, because he will respond back in the same space, like that lower level space of like middle school boy, like, "You're ugly. You're ugly and your pants are out of style." Like, it's just like, it's the most immature thing. Anyway, Francesca has had time on today, and she has been coming with the receipts. Okay. She has been coming with the receipt, and God bless her heart, because I don't have it in me. She has been educating this man, not in a nice way, but in a like necessary way, on what misogyny is, because I honestly, from how he is responding, don't think this man actually understands what people are saying. Like, I think he actually lives in his brain down there. When people say, "Hey, your app doesn't work well and it doesn't, it's glitchy and the functionality is not that great. Could you spend more time fixing that?" He will, have like a little tinge personally, take that personally, and then start getting negative. The last thing I want to say about this is, I had positive associations with the name Isaac Hayes until this man. And I hate that for Isaac Hayes. Okay. To have a good name and have somebody wreck it like this, that's wild work. Let's move on to some church conversations. Recently, I have discovered a podcast called The New Evangelicals. Why? Because apparently I'm deconstructing. I didn't know there was a word for that. But during the pandemic, I was, fighting I was going to beat down the door to get back in church. And then something happened between me and God. And he was showing me all the stuff, and it was a whole thing. And me, myself, Rashni, would have never believed you if you would have told me in March of 2020, when the doors of the church closed, that I was not going to be the first person back in there. But that's not how God worked it out. Also, I started reading my Bible, and ironically, daily reading of my Bible is part of what made me not go back to organized church. I'm not saying that's for you. I'm saying that's my personal experience. And then I found out online that there's a whole movement of people doing what's called deconstructing. And I suppose that I fit into that. So even though it's like a weird word for me to put on myself, that's happening, right? So The New Evangelicals is a podcast started by a man who is having a deconstructing experience, specifically from white Christian nationalist spaces, right? And I'm enjoying the podcast because I enjoy anyone who, when they speak, it sounds like they're making sense to me. I can't really listen to a lot of people who sound like they have to dissociate to believe what they're believing. And listen, I'm just saying that that's my experience of it. I feel like I had to check out a bit to believe some of the things that I was believing, and God really had to hold my hand and show that to me. And so I'm really enjoying TNE, which is The New Evangelicals. Yeah. So another person that I listen to, who is one of the few pastors I can actually listen to without cringing and rolling my eyes lately, is Pastor Darius Daniels. I have been listening to him for years. And once again, if I listen to somebody and I feel like I have to dissociate and check out and not think like clear thoughts to listen to them, I got to put them to the side. So unfortunately, a lot of church people have gone to the side. That's just my experience, right? But Darius Daniels has not gone to the side. Actually, he sounds like he makes sense to me. Like nothing about that. I'm not saying everything's perfect. I'm saying that a lot more of it aligns with like reality to me. So imagine my surprise when I throw in the New Evangelicals one day to just kind of listen to in the background while I'm doing something. And I find out that the guy on that podcast, who has not been back to church through the pandemic, just like me, decided to physically go to a church for some reason and just happened to go to Darius Daniels' church. It was such an unexpected crossover to me. And I was like, shut up. And then talk about divine providence and serendipity, that the sermon that Darius Daniels preached that day, that the man from the New Evangelicals, who has not been physically in a church and is basically deconstructing, was so aligned with topics that are important to him and to me, specifically about the presence of classism, racism, and sexism in the church. What an amazing crossover. If you are a person that is interested in those sorts of topics, look up the New Evangelicals online. They have actually spun off and started another podcast, Tim and April show. I think they just put up their first episode on YouTube yesterday or the day before, as well as Darius Daniels Ministries on YouTube, if that kind of thing is where you are in your religious Christianity, spirituality journey, because it was just taking a bit too much dissonance for me to remain in Christian spaces, especially with the exposure. I'm not going to say rise, because I think it was there all the time. We just didn't know the exposure and the uncovering of this festering Christian nationalism thing and alignment to all these things that in my mind are counter to the Jesus in the Bible that I'm reading about. I'm going to just put that out there. Okay. If you needed to catch it, go ahead and catch it. Let's move on. And now in news, Joy Reid's show, The Readout, was canceled abruptly on MSNBC. I don't really watch traditional news, so I knew of Joy. I follow her on social media everywhere, and I'm a person who kind of likes behind the scenes relatable commentary. And if you're going to put up a clip, I'm probably going to see it on YouTube and or your social media. I'm not going to like pull you up on MSNBC. So my consumption of Joy's information is not going to stop. However, they just cut her off. She had a show called The Readout. They just cut her off. Unfortunately, I saw a bunch of MAGA people in her comment section rejoicing about the fact that she, as well as other people of color, are being removed from so many large institutions of our nighttime news. And beyond that, Lester Holt is apparently leaving NBC. Now, I don't know what the background is on that. I saw the news story go through my timeline and I was like, where is all the color going? What in the whitewashed? Now, granted, people like Rachel Maddow and people like that, who is a white woman who is like, this is a bad decision. I'm not really sure what's going on. Sometimes I feel like I'm being punked. However, one of my favorite things in this space is Don Lemon, who was, I don't know if he released or he left. I don't remember. But basically, Don Lemon was another broadcast news anchor who is now free and in the wild with over 500,000 person subscriber YouTube page. And he is live on TikTok every time I pull up my TikTok. That man is live on TikTok. He was tired, okay, of code switching, and freeing that man and his mouth is what I think we all need. I really hope that we can all just live in a place where we can all say what we're actually thinking and be unbridled. And so I hope for Joy Reid the same thing, that there's an unbridledness, although she didn't really come off as bridled to me. She kind of came off like she was saying what she felt like, which is possibly why they got rid of her. But an even more liberated and unbridled mouth is what I hope for Joy, in the same way that we see Don Lemon out here just wilding out. And it's a joy. I love to see freedom and authenticity. I get that our systems don't always reward it, but gosh, that must feel so good for him. Okay. And so all the best to Joy for the work that she has done and the work that she will continue to do. Lester Holt as well, Don Lemon, and just pray for our news sources and our ability to actually find out what's going on in real life, because it's like they're just like whitewashing and eliminating everyone. Let's move on to politics. And I say politics because the first thing I want to talk about is Pastor Jamal Bryant responding back to the Black people at the Black History Month event at the White House. So apparently there was a Black History Month event at the White House, which was shocking to me because I thought that -92 said we didn't need nothing like that. So anyway, I don't try to make sense out of things that don't make sense anymore, because when people who don't make sense do things, confusion is a tool of oppression. I don't have time. Okay. I've spent my life being confused by confusing people and trying to make sense out of things that don't make sense. Now I just call a thing and move on. Okay. So that was confusing. I was shocked that they had an event. Apparently Tiger Woods was there. I saw the picture of Tiger Woods and I was like, is he ill? And then I looked it up and he had some like medical stuff going on, but like you could see in his body, like this is not the Tiger Woods that we all feel like we knew back in the day. And so, but getting to Jamal Bryant, apparently there was some picture or video of people who clearly are not the 92 or the 80%, right? Clearly not the 92 or the 80%. It's going to be up in the White House at the Black History Month. It's going to be, what would that be? The 8% and the 20%. And they had a picture of Pastor Jamal Bryant. I don't know what they had the picture of Pastor Jamal Bryant for. Real talk, I don't know. I'm just starting to get more familiar with Jamal Bryant. I know of him by him being linked to other people. Like I'll watch people's podcasts and he's on their podcast, or like just hearing of him by hearsay. I honestly only started listening to the man preach like last week because of this that I'm telling you about, and like the Target boycott situation. I was like, what he talking about? I don't really ever listen to this man preach. Although when I listen to him talk, he sounds extremely smart and intelligent and easy to listen to. And he doesn't like make me itch and make me like roll my eyes. So maybe there's something there. So the people holding up Jamal Bryant's picture, I don't know if they were mocking him, but apparently they were mocking him. And Jamal Bryant got up there on a Sunday, this past Sunday, and was like, I'm sorry, y'all must forget where I'm from. Okay, I'm from these streets. Instead of being a you know what and passively holding up my picture, pull up on me. And when he was like, I ain't never scared. That man, I think they were playing I ain't never scared in the church. And I was like, oh. But once again, let me say something. Liberty and freedom and being your real self is so important to me. I am following a white woman. I don't know her name, but I'll put it on the screen when I edit this, on TikTok, who is doing the work of breaking down whiteness to white women who need to do work in their whiteness and their womanness and the intersectionality of that. And I love that for them, because that's your work to do, not our work. Okay, I told you about the blue bracelets and y'all tried to get all mad at me. Okay, that's not my work. That's your work to do. She is doing that work. Okay. And she's also creating safe spaces for us to have conversations, us meaning Black women, to also come in and have the conversations, because the work started with her trying to create safe spaces for Black women, even though she's a white woman. Right. So anyway, and she is, one of her gifts is the ability to explain and intellectually conceive and then explain very nuanced concepts about whiteness. And recently on one of her videos, she said that often when you are socialized as a white woman, you are trying to be helpful when being performative, because performative is really the only way that you know how to be helpful. Like you don't even know how to be authentic. So performative is your offering to this thing. And that's why she's doing the work to help white women break down this stuff, because she has an inside look at what we see outside, obviously. And we're just like, why y'all acting like that? And she's just like, this is why. Anyway, all that to say, I love seeing people jump out of performative behaviors and into their real self. Jamal Bryant standing up behind a pulpit saying, pull up on me, is an authentic expression of who he actually is, not who he thinks he's supposed to be because he's standing behind a pulpit and it's this and that and the other and all the reasons. I love seeing people get to be their full, integrated, authentic self. And if pull up on me is what you want to say, I love that for him. And directly opposite of the concept of performative code switching and rule keeping so that you can catch your prizes in a system, which is what the white woman is talking about is an inherent part of whiteness that they have to dismantle, is Black people tend to lean more toward, yes, code switching and that kind of stuff to stay safe, but liberation. And I love that for Jamal Bryant. Okay. Liberate that tongue. Okay. And telling people, instead of being big and bold up in the White House, pulling up my picture, pull up on me. And I'm here for that behavior. Another thing that I've been loving seeing is, apparently, the Republican congressmen have all gone on break and gone back home now for the first time since -92 is in office. And they have all been having these town halls, and the town halls are chaos and pandemonium. White Republicans are pissed the hell off. Who knew? I am shocked because, like, when -92 won, I thought that we would see more rejoicing in the streets. Where is this, like, giant flooding of human beings that voted for him that would be gleeful, who were, so upset about him, losing incorrectly in their mind that they stormed the Capitol? Like, what? It was way too quiet. It was weird and quiet. And now seeing these town halls with all these white people, old and young, old white people too, going off on their congressmen, mostly because of Muskrat, which I think is hilarious. Also makes me wonder, like, isn't this what y'all voted for? And it really makes you wonder what's going on in the Republican camp, because these town halls are not happy people that are like, yay, you're doing what we asked you to do, what we just voted for. These are pissed off people. I watched one recently where this white lady, who apparently is a doctor, was physically carried out by non-security people while everyone in the room just watched. And the person behind the microphone up on the stage was like saying negative things and like calling her names. I was like, what am I looking at? And let me I sounded like a pastor. Let me get this out. I recall when Kamala Harris was on the campaign trail, there was a person walking through one of her rallies screaming, Jesus is King, Christ is Lord, or Jesus is Lord, Christ is King, right? And she turned to that person and said, I think you're at the wrong rally. And the right took that, ran with it, and decided that she didn't have no God. She was shutting down somebody screaming, Jesus is King, yada, 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 right? To the point that I have recently seen a MAGA voter flipping off and cursing out a young girl, an older white woman, flipping off and cussing out. I watched her with my own eyeballs. A younger woman bringing up that Jesus is Lord rally interaction and how she would prefer to vote felon. I would always vote felon before I voted for somebody who shut down Jesus is Lord and Christ is King. Where are you going, Rashni? When I watched the video of Kamala, I could not make out what the man was saying. I saw a disruptive person screaming in the middle of a mostly quiet rally, somebody behind the microphone talking, Kamala, and Kamala realizing this person was being disruptive, turning to them and being like, hey, I think you're at the wrong rally, which is kind of like a funny way of being like, security, right? It wasn't until later from somebody else's video that I heard what the guy was saying. So if the version that was filming what Kamala was experiencing couldn't hear, I don't know if she heard the exact words. Anyway, all of that to say, watching this town hall now of people going off on each other from the microphone and disruptively, what's going on? Do the Republicans think that it's okay to act like this? In the Kamala experience, it's not okay, in my mind, to be disruptive, no matter what you're screaming. Whether you're screaming Jesus is Lord, he's King, great. But also, there's a time and a place. You walking through screaming, if you were walking through screaming strawberry, she probably would have said the same thing. And then over here, I'm watching them go off on each other from the microphone. I don't even know if what I just said made sense, but it made me tired, but it also made me joyous because I was like, oh, there's an implosion going on. Also, I thought that's what y'all voted for. Next, apparently earlier this week, somebody hacked the television system in the HUD offices, the Department of Housing and Urban Development offices in Washington, and was piping in an apparently AI generated video of Donald Trump licking Elon Musk's toes, kind of like one of those, like, porn, OnlyFan, foot worship videos. I did see a clip of it on TikTok. I thought it wasn't real. I came out and did a Google search and found out that it was actually real. I don't know if they figured out who did it. What makes it funny to me is now that visual is ingrained in our brains because y'all know these AI generated videos are so realistic. And when I look up the topic on Google, I wrote this down. It says an apparently AI generated video, which means news sources have to make the caveat that they don't even know if it's real or not. Which means in their mind, they have to at least say it could be real, it could not be real. What a time to be alive. Also, after I filmed the last episode, Elon Muskrat had a press conference apparently in the Oval Office, standing with -92 sitting, and Elon's son was part of the people in the room. And Elon was doing most of the talking, which is weird and wild because who elected this man? Why is this man seeming like he's the president? And based off of a party and a people that value permission, power, position, and patriarchy so much, watching Elon and Trump in that Oval Office, it seemed like such a passive position for Trump to be in. I'm like, if your value proposition is patriarchy and permission-based power and position, how could you let this man stand over you in the Resolute office while you sit behind the desk and be silenced by his 4-year-old? I think his 4-year-old was telling him like big bad words to shut his mouth. He's not the real president, allegedly. Okay. And some other stuff that had some obscenities in it. And people online were like, 4-year-olds are parrots, meaning they hear something and they say it back. They don't really, he's not coming up with that on his own. He's repeating back what he's heard. And they're like, okay, where do we think he heard that from? He heard it from the man who's talking. He heard it from the man who is shrug punking the president. I sat there and I was like, are you not embarrassed? Based off of the rules of the game that you are playing, this seems so embarrassing. It feels like Elon has him by the nuts. And how is that okay? To the point that his 4 or 5, however old this little boy is, has you, the president of the United States, shrug punked in the Oval Office and silenced behind the Resolute desk. You guys, what are we looking at? Also, Muskrat and his Doge department is apparently blasting through the federal government like they blasted through Twitter, which I guess people thought was a good thing. And one of the things he decided to do was something comparable to what he did with Twitter, which is email everyone in the federal government and be like, hey, send me back to this email 5 things you did last week. People in the Twitter world said that allegedly he had taken such an email from them, ran it through some sort of database and or AI, who knows, to pick out specific keywords and just kind of like carte blanche start getting rid of stuff. I guess that's his efficient way of doing it. Granted, you see Elon all the time with this chainsaw that he uses. And in my mind, getting rid of oversights and government excessive spending and stuff in the government is not a bad idea. I totally agree with that. However, I feel like it's a little bit more of a fine surgery so that you don't, cut off or hack off something that's necessary. Apparently Elon does not agree. Okay, so he sends the email out, or he has his Doge people send the email out, which right before I tape this, apparently there's some woman who is now the head of Doge. I don't know. And the internet gets a hold of this email and apparently floods this email with responses from everyone who was willing to write back to an email. Okay. I saw people offering up code to send back to the email, I guess to blow up the system, to the point that the last I heard about this directive from Doge to send 5 things that you did to decide whether or not you keep your job. was that they were rethinking it. I also saw somebody, I don't remember what the person's role is, but he outright said out of his mouth that the whole intention is to traumatize. He used the word trauma, right? Some conjugation of trauma, people in these spaces to make them nervous about whether or not they are being efficient in their positions. Also, it was a little strange because the FBI, the head of the FBI, Patel, actually told FBI people, you don't need to respond to that. Lawyers have said, you don't need to respond to that. There's a lot of confusion in the camp. So I just hope that the chainsaw version of it, where they're hacking off arms, legs, and heads, is going to work out. And may the odds ever be in all of our favor. Additionally, they have already gotten rid of park ranger jobs and all of these positions that have people getting online and sharing what they were working on. And some of it is like, okay, park rangers and people who are like testing the water to make sure it's not going to kill us. And the last thing I want to talk about is the NAACP awards, and specifically Kamala Harris being cited and seen out and about amongst the people. One of the things that I'm enjoying about Kamala is, unlike other candidates who have lost a election, she has not gone into like hiding. I don't know why they do that. She can be seen out and about amongst the people. The first time I saw her, it was several different fundraising events for the fires in California. And since then, I have seen a few other videos. Most recently, she and her husband, Doug Emhoff, were at a Broadway show. And I think it was a Broadway show or maybe like a Broadway theater show. And there was a standing ovation for them. Often the videos that I'm seeing are just regular people, some Gen Z person with a camera being absolutely astonished. Like they're filming Kamala like this, and then they turn the camera like, oh my gosh, because she's not even getting seats up in a box away from humans. She's sitting next to regular people buying regular tickets to events. And I am glad for her, because I feel like that is necessary for her to show she ain't never scared, like Jamal Bryant said. But also, I think she knows we needed to see her. I think Kamala may be aware of what she represented. And for me, what she represented was 100 days of delusional hope. Okay. We all were very doom and gloom and like, what the heck is this? And for a moment, this woman got to come from behind Joe Biden and be his armor bearer, basically, which is kind of like what the vice president is, and show us her full self, her full personality, and her thoughts for how this country could look and changes that can be made. Was it perfect? No, because it's too much of a moving train, as we can see with Doge and them hacking off arms and legs, blowing things up with no rhyme or reason. Okay. But was it hopeful, and was it filled with joy and light? Yes. And so for 100 days, I personally experienced what could be seen as delusional hope behind this woman who I would have happily had as in the position of president of these here United States. And yes, patriarchy and misogyny and racism eventually did not elect that, or however this man got up in there, because who knows? Okay. The day that I woke up from the election, I was confused. The numbers didn't number to me, but okay, you don't see us storming the Capitol. Let's just put that. It is what it is at this point. And so I'm happy for Kamala, because I feel like she knows that she represents hope and joy for us, even though she had to retract her personality. It's like she went back to vice president her, which I'm like, oh man. But at the same time, seeing her in these public spaces around the people, I believe sends a message, which brings me to the NAACP awards. So she was awarded the Chairman's Award at the NAACP Image Awards recently, and she gave a speech that I don't think enough people are talking about. When I listened to that speech, it was a very full circle kind of wink wink to the Black people in the room, message of hope and where our power lies. If you remember, Kamala is an attorney. And in her campaign, she talked about how she has always been for the people, to the point that, when she goes into the courtroom, the first thing she says is Kamala Harris for the people. And she wove that concept of the power of the people through her entire campaign. Well, during her NAACP speech, which I think is the longest I've heard her talk since the election, which I love because she has been a longstanding member of the NAACP, and she is also, it's a room full of Black people, okay? So there's less pressure for her to have to do what we have to do in other spaces, okay? She brought it all back around, and she reminded us that we the people have the power. We the people is the first words of our United States Constitution. And she brought it back to helping us remember that the power is in the people. It's not in the government, because the government is to serve the people. And it was kind of a little heartbreaking, emotional as they panned through the room. And I could see men and women having what seemed like either dissociative experiences where they didn't want to tap back into the joy of, look what we could have had as a president. And I even felt like I saw a few people tear up. And I understand that they're tearing up because of what it represents and the hope that we all got to have for like 100 days, just dreaming about a land and a world where we could, for the first time ever, elect a Black woman president, a Indian woman president. Yes, I believe. You relax, okay? If that just made you flinch, you relax. You figure that out on your own. It harkened back to the hope of her campaign, even though she is much more stoic in her delivery than she was on the campaign trail. So if you have not caught Kamala Harris's NAACP Awards speech, accepting the chairman's award, which I love that they did that for her, because it is super important for us to remember that we the people, in order to form a more perfect union and all the rest of that, is exactly what our country is actually built on. And even though there are foundational systems that are rearing their head, we the people is still a super important part of how we heal it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the I've Created a Monster podcast. This video is sponsored by patreon.com/Glamazzini and the Black Woman Healing Fund. To support the fund and be live in the chat when I record this podcast, become a patron at patreon.com/Glamazzini. And don't forget, you guys, show up, speak up, F something up, and create your own monster. Bye, y'all.